8 months ago, Lenovo announced the Smart Paper. And after the delayed market launch was plagued with availability problems, I finally have it here. Let's talk about why it was delayed, what has changed since the announcement, and also talk about my first impressions. Okay, so just a bit of backstory. The Smart Paper is a 10.3-inch ink tablet and the international release of the Chinese version called the Yoga Paper. Its announcement generated a lot of buzz, but was followed by a lot of confusion about its launch date. I made a separate video on that, so check it out if you want to know what happened from the past point of view. When the delay became apparent, I reached out to Lenovo for comment, and unfortunately, they didn't respond. So I waited a little longer. When Lenovo reintroduced the Smart Paper with new marketing materials, there was something different than in the beginning. They overhauled the UI. Since Lenovo didn't respond the first time, I contacted Remarkable, the company behind the Remarkable 2, and asked for comment. Specifically, I wanted to know if there have been legal proceedings between Remarkable and Lenovo. Without going into specifics, they confirmed there were, and that Lenovo won't be using a graphical user interface similar to theirs. So there's that. Since I wanted to test the Smart Paper, I immediately ordered it through the Lenovo website when it became available. But unfortunately, even though it said it would ship within 10 days, it never did. After a couple of weeks of the shipping date moving back again and again, and the customer support not being able to provide any meaningful answers on when to actually expect the shipment, I finally canceled the order and bought it from a seller on eBay who supposedly had it in stock. Unfortunately, again, that seller didn't deliver either. So after weeks of waiting, I got my money back from PayPal and ordered the Lenovo Smart Paper from Amazon, which finally delivered it without any further delays. And that's the story of one of my worst online shopping experience to date, from first ordering it to holding it in my hand from a third seller. More than 3 months have passed. Well, now I have it here, so let's finally see what's my first impression of it. The first thing I noticed when taking it out of the box is how slim the Smart Paper is. 5.5 millimeters. You can tell Lenovo has a lot of experience developing and producing devices because it is one of the highest quality ink devices I have seen so far. Not only related to the thickness, but also in regards to the industrial design with the metal frame and clean-cut edges. It somewhat looks familiar to the Bookstep Ultra series, but feels more solid. There's almost no flex, even when trying a bit harder, and also no creaking and cracking. With 410 grams, it's not the lightest 10-inch ink tablet, but still pretty light compared to some other more recent additions in that space. The most unusual thing about it is the pen placement. You can attach the stylus to the side of the device, as it's done with most other ink tablets, but there's also this dedicated space besides the screen. I'm not sure yet if I'm a big fan of it in regards to handling or holding the tablet. I'll have to use it a little longer to form a definitive opinion. But for now, I like that the case also covers the pen this way, which is a cool way of making sure it doesn't go anywhere when you put the device in your bag. The tablet has a quad-core CPU and 4 gigs of RAM, which seem to be good enough to run smoothly. Again, I'll have to use it a bit more to make a final assessment, but from the initial looks of it, there isn't much to complain. The only thing I personally don't like is that they didn't include a speaker. There are 2 microphones, but for playing back the audio, you'll need compatible Bluetooth speakers or headphones. A simple mono speaker would have made the user experience better in my opinion. The Smart Paper runs Android 11, or to be more precise, AOSP, so there's no Google Play support. Android 11 obviously isn't the latest version, and I doubt it will ever get an upgrade to another one. But that's normal for ink tablets, and Android 11 is fine for most apps. Speaking of apps, contrary to initial reports, The Lenovo Smart Paper allows to install Android apps, but as always, the e-ink screen technology wasn't designed to run dynamic content, or the other way around. Android apps are usually not designed to run on an e-ink screen. Onyx Books, as the most prominent e-ink Android manufacturer, has optimized their system for faster screen refreshes. The Lenovo Smart Paper also has three different display refresh settings, but they don't come close in refresh rate to the modes on Books devices. So Lenovo opted for keeping render quality as good as possible while at least partially allowing to change the refresh mode. Talking about the screen, as I mentioned, it's a 10.3-inch in-color screen with a 227 ppi resolution and a Frontlight that's also color temperature adjustable. Overall, it looks even, but I can see small imperfections with some lighting settings. To be more precise, there isn't a noticeable brightness gradient, but the top left corner is unevenly lit with my device. But it's bright and the display offers good contrast levels. So all in all, it's not the crispest screen you can get, but it does its job well and is easy on the eyes. As one of the very few ink devices out there, it also has two ambient light sensors, so the front light can be adjusted automatically if you like. The flush display front isn't as scratch resistant as on a Books device, but does have a very nice paper-like feeling, similar to what the Remarkable 2 and Kindle Scribe are offering, which makes the writing feel also somewhat similar to paper, together with the low 20 milliseconds latency of the Wacom touchscreen and the very low stack of the display components. The writing on it feels very natural. The stylus itself feels solid, but lacks an additional button or an eraser, which I always love having because it's so much more convenient in everyday use. With the notebooks function, there are a couple of different pen types and a few other options like page templates and layers, and I'll go into those more in my full review. But what stood out most in my initial testing is the recording function, because there's an option to sync the recording of your notes when playing back the audio. So you'll see what was spoken when you wrote something. Let's see how that works. The dictionaries work well in general, however, depending on the language, they often only identify words in their infinitive form. But Pocketbook has heard the criticism and implemented morphological dictionaries. Those should help to improve the accuracy, but to be honest, at least for German, doesn't seem to do much at the moment. So let's see if that gets better in the future. The note-taking feature on the Inkpad 4 is also quite good, offering multiple functions including filtering and exporting options. You can either type out your notes using the built-in virtual QWERTY keyboard, or you can handwrite them directly on the page. However, you'll need to toggle the write mode before starting, and also keep in mind that handwriting only works with your fingers or capacitive pen. So this isn't the same natural writing experience that you'll find on Android tablets with a Wacom screen. Besides taking notes, you can also read books and PDFs. And to do that with the native reading app, you need to fill your library. I'll go into detail in my full review, but this has got to be the most unintuitive to fill library I've ever used on any ink device. And that says a lot. You can't define folders to scan, and when downloading content, you need to manually move it to the library. And when using the USB-C connection to copy eBooks to the device, you need to find a library folder, which is easier said than done because it's not in the root directory, where at least I would have expected it to be. The options in regular books are limited to the most basic functions that you would expect. And even there, some things are missing, like the option to change the font or taking sticky notes with the virtual QWERTY keyboard. But at least you can directly annotate on the page, which is nice. PDF files aren't great either, with basically just a cropping mode to remove the margins on the sides. It looks like you can't even zoom in. Maybe I haven't found the right settings in my quick test. Remember, this is only my first impression and I only had limited time with the device yet. But at least that first impression isn't particularly good for PDFs. Okay, so that was my first impression of the Lenovo Smart Paper. All in all, I like the sleek hardware with its great material mix and build quality. I also like the display texture very much, which together with the pen's low latency feels great to write on. But software-wise, my first impression is a bit underwhelming. Note-taking is focusing on the most important functions and even has a cool extra with the synced voice recording, but the default reading app for ebooks and PDFs feels quite unfinished. It actually reminds me a lot of Huawei's MatePad Paper, which also has great hardware but is lacking in the software department. I'll take a closer look in my full review, so subscribe and like to not miss that. Thanks for time watching and see you on the next one.